Private agency or county? I've done both. Let's talk about the pros and cons in foster care and adoption.
1, 2, 3.
Let's go. First, let's talk about private agencies. Private agencies can be great. There's some things about them that can be a little difficult as well. So first off, a private agency is an additional organization involved in the life of your family. This is a pro and a con. For example, there's going to be more social workers involved and more visits to your house. This can be awful, or this can be great, especially with children who have some extra needs, or if you need a little extra support from the agency. This is who you want to go with, because that extra support comes from private agencies much more than it comes from counties. Okay, private agencies can charge fees, especially application fees or yearly fees. Counties typically don't do this, or if they do, these fees are really small. Counties will still have fingerprint fees, but you pay for your fingerprints sometimes, but sometimes they even reimburse those. Whereas private agencies, they may not. Now, not every state allows private agencies to charge fees, so check in your state. Like, for example, in California, private agencies can only charge fees if they're grandfathered in. In Ohio, private agencies all around us seem to charge fees. So this is something you should look at. With a private agency, partly having an extra layer of social workers, but just also partly because the focus is more on supporting foster families, there tend to be more workers who you can call, or people who will answer your phone call right away if you need help. There's just more support. So you call someone, chances are they're going to answer. You might even have the ability to text your social worker, maybe the recruitment person. Like, there's just more relationship and there's more support. A private agency is on your side. This is important. So if you're looking to do foster care or adoption, a private agency is going to maybe even market you, especially important for adoptions. They may market you to outside organizations. With a county, I had to fight every step of the way to even get them to respond to phone calls or emails from outside counties calling to ask if I would adopt children from those counties. So this is one reason why I switched from a county to a private agency. The agency, not only do they actually answer the phone when other counties call or when other organizations call with a possible placement, but they actually go out, they market you, they talk to other counties about you typically, and they're just more on your side. Private agencies, my experience is that they have a much faster certification process. Now, don't misunderstand this. This does not mean fewer hours in training. In fact, often with a private agency, there's more hours and more intense trainings than with a county. Counties tend to be bigger groups, but often, and again, this is my experience, often those counties tend to not offer the trainings as frequently as the private agencies do. So instead of smaller groups of people going through trainings frequently throughout the year, more availability, the counties tend to have larger groups of people fewer times a year, which means that your process can tend to be longer. When I went through a county, it took almost 9 months to be certified. When I went through a private agency, it took, well, it would have taken 3. I dragged my feet. But we'll say 3 months with a private agency to become certified. Okay, a private agency is a step beyond the county. So to understand this, you have to understand that Kids First, they try to place with counties. If they can't find someone for that child, or that child is too high level of care, they end up going to a private agency to find someone to take care of that child. This means there tends to be more rules for private agencies than there are for counties. So for example, in California, the private agency I was with had more rules about how many kids could be in one bedroom than the county had. The county would cram like 6 kids in one bedroom. In the private agency I was with, they had to follow a different set of rules, and so they could only have, I think it was like 4 kids in a bedroom without asking for special permission from the state to put another child in there. And it usually had to be a sibling or a sibling set if it was going to be more. And as I said, counties tend to call their own people first. This is important because kids typically come from the counties. That's where the organization, or they are the organization that actually remove children from homes when they aren't safe. They come from the counties. The counties try to place them with their own people first. And when that doesn't work, when they can't find a home for them, then they call private agencies. This is really important, especially if you want really young children, infants, toddlers, in foster care, because those kids are going to tend to go to county homes. Tend to, not always. I've been called for infants as part of a private agency, but at that time I was the person who answered the phone. So that's just how it goes sometimes. But generally speaking, you're not going to get as many calls if you're with a private agency, and they're going to be older kids. However, the other side of that is if they're calling you for a child, those children tend to stay longer. if it's a private agency. And again, this is a generalization, but just from what I've seen over time and from what social workers have said, typically if a child is placed with a private agency, they're not just that simple, we're going to take this child away for a short period of time, work on a few things with the family kind of a thing. These are kids who have more needs. These are families that have more needs. So they're going to tend to stay a lot longer than kids who come in and are just with a county agency. Okay, so a bummer about private agencies is that they tend to pay their staff less. County workers get paid more. And so the downside of that is that private agencies tend to have more turnover of social workers. Not always. Like, there are a lot of social workers who this is their calling in life. And they're all about the kids and all about service. And it's a beautiful thing. And they stick with private agencies. However, often when a social worker gets a fair amount of experience with a private agency, then the county will hire them for much more money, sometimes $20,000 more a year kind of a thing, like a lot more money than they get through a private agency. And so private agencies tend to have more turnover. Let's talk about counties. There are fewer social workers involved in your life. Now, this can be a great thing. And in fact, I thought this was going to be a great thing for us until I realized that meant that they don't always answer your phone calls, that often they don't feel comfortable giving out their cell phones at all, or certainly not for text messages. And so, some do. I've had county workers that do, but generally speaking, it's just not as common that you have that close of a connection with them. And so if you have a need, you might not be able to reach them. It happened. It's just the way it is with a county. Someone is not as closely connected to you. They're not on 24/7 like the private agency workers that I've experienced have been on 24/7. So with counties, again, more of the calls you get are short-term calls. There'll be a lot more calls, but they tend to be shorter term. And so you have to decide, are you going to primarily be a foster family that's willing to take in a whole bunch of short-term calls? Or if you're an adopted family, are you going to be willing to take a whole bunch of foster children in with the hope that eventually someone may turn into an adoptive placement? Again, these are generalizations, county versus private, but overall, this is the trend. One benefit of going with a county is there are fewer fees. Most of the time, most counties don't seem to have application fees, or if they do, they're small. They're not huge. They may even reimburse things like fingerprints, as I said earlier, and other expenses. Now, counties offer less support. So we've had children flipping out and no one answering the phone before. This is hard. This is a difficult thing. There's usually an on-call number. Ours, you left a message and someone got back to you as soon as they could. Which, in certain circumstances, that's terrible. Like, some of the things that you go through with foster children or foster children waiting to be adopted can be really tough. And so if someone doesn't answer the call, that's hard. That's very hard. Counties won't market you to other counties or other agencies for adoption. In fact, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest because they want you to stay as one of their foster parents. They want people there who they can call. This is another reason why I switched to a private agency. My experience is there are all these people I found out like 3 months later had been interested in me as an adoptive parent. And the county didn't answer their emails, didn't answer the social worker emails, the placement worker emails, didn't answer their phone calls. And so, in fact, the only times they did were when I found out they'd been trying to call them, like the worker for the child contacted me saying, hey, why is your county not answering? Are you no longer interested in this child? And I got on their case and repeatedly badgered the county to answer. This is tough if you want to adopt a child because there's a chance that the child you want to adopt is not part of your county. You want someone who can be on your side. Now, if you're just doing foster care, your county will probably have plenty of foster care placements, and you don't have to worry about this at all. Beautiful, wonderful. And you know what? God bless you for doing foster care. There's such a huge need. So if you're doing that, thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate you. That said, if you want to do adoption, it's a mixed bag because county folks, like if you do adoption through foster care, in a way, you get first dibs on the children who are in your home. But if you're hoping to adopt an older child who's not in foster care, it might be a little harder. And in general, counties tend to move kids in and out of your home a lot and much more frequently than a private agency will. That's not because of the private agency being nicer or anything like that. It's just because of the way the whole system works together. Counties have fewer rules, but changes in staff. And this is from what I've seen. This might be true with larger private agencies as well. I've only been with smaller private agencies for a long period of time anyway. I'm with a larger one now, but generally I've only been with smaller private agencies. And changes in staff with a county can dramatically change how the rules are acted out upon foster parents. A staff change can have a dramatic impact on the way they enforce those rules or interpret those rules. A dramatic impact. And so you might be used to things being one way, and all of a sudden staff changes, and oh my goodness, everything you do might have to change. Just the way it is with counties. Which leads me to another point. Counties tend to be, and please remember this is a generalization because some social workers, even some supervising social workers, are not this way at all, but they tend to see foster parents as the enemy. And this is because a lot of foster parents actually stand up in court for kids if they're able to and speak out about them being reunified when parents are still on drugs or still having issues, and the foster parents are seeing these. The social worker might not see these as well. So foster parents sometimes come across as being against reunification, and I hope this isn't any of us, any of you, but there are foster parents out there who really are against reunification, period. Like their goal is adoption, they're doing foster care just for adoption, and they actually try to do things to make it hard for children to go back home. I hope this isn't any of us. Please don't be that way. But because there are folks like that, and because of other issues, sometimes the county is very negative towards foster parents, and we come across as the enemy, which with private agencies, again, they're more on our side. I think they're on the kids' side too, but they're on our side as well. So it's not so much us against them as it can be with a county agency. Okay, counties pay staff more, and sometimes quite a bit more. One way that this impacts social workers is that they tend to stay around longer, which can be a great thing, right? Because there may be more consistency in your foster children's or even adopted children's relationship with social workers over time if they stick around more. This can be a great thing. Unfortunately, the downside of this is people who are burned out tend to like the benefits, like the job, and they stay in it. And so you have a lot more burned out social workers who are done, who just are done. And they're numb to the pains that the children face. They're numb to all the problems of the system. They're just going to follow the policies, follow the rules, not be really invested, not answer their phones. They're done. I want to be very clear, this is not everyone. We've had a couple of amazing county workers. And so that's not them. No, this is not them at all. In fact, I want to shout out to Tiffany in California. Tiffany, you were one of the most amazing social workers that we've ever had. I so appreciate you. County or private, you rocked our faces off. So I hope this has been helpful, talking about the differences between private and county in my experience. All that said, I hope you all really consider this. It is an important decision, but you can change your mind. It might be a pain to change your mind. In the state of Ohio, you have to wait a year before you can switch, but you can change your mind if the agency or the county you're with isn't working out. So please keep that in mind. Have a great day. Thanks for listening, folks. Let us know how we can keep offering great content to you in the future.